one definition of hospitality is to make space. So friend, could you scoot over and make space at your kitchen table to share a meal? Expand your heart to make space for a new relationship. Listen instead of talking, making space for others to be understood. This season, we'll learn from the ultimate host, Jesus Christ, and how he extended the welcome of the gospel to make space for all kinds of people. Welcome back, friends. We're in the middle of a series about scooting over or scooching over or making space for people, imitating Christ hospitality. And we're going to go to Jesus' very first miracle, and that was at the wedding of Cana today. So spoiler alert. But before we go there, Susan has just come off of doing a wedding this summer. So I don't know if she has a wedding hangover or what she's learned, but I think we've both done it for now daughters and sons. And, it does teach you a lot about hospitality, because you talk about throwing out an invitation. I mean, all kinds of people come, and sometimes it doesn't work out like you think. So what did you learn through planning some weddings, Susan?
Yes. If you have been listening to this podcast, you've been on the ride with me of how do I find kitten heels for my mother of the groom dress. And I actually had someone say, did you get your shoes when I was at church?
I want you to loop back. What's the rest of the story? We can't leave people hanging. It's kind of
right. I know. We should have here they are. I'll just send you a picture. But I have to say, planning for a daughter's wedding, a lot more intense. And all of a sudden, and I love planning things like events. Like I love that part of it. I wasn't like, we were on a budget. So I decided not to hire a coordinator, but just a day of coordinator. It was a dear friend of mine who's very organized and I could trust her. But all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm responsible for hosting this party. It is a big deal. I've never thrown a party for this many people. And so I think that pressure was getting to me, but we had it under control. And as soon as the rehearsal was over, I just relaxed. And it was like, it's Maggie's job now. We've talked. Everybody's got everybody's numbers. And so we come in, and so you know how you get, if you're the mom, you're getting to the front. It was a chapel. And I remember getting to the front, like where we're about to walk in. I'm like, why is everybody talking? Like everybody's just chit-chatting in there. And I'm used to when like you're waiting on stuff to happen, you kind of quietly, well, they were chit-chatting. You couldn't hear the violinist going. I'm like, my friends need to calm it down so we can get this wedding on. And so finally they see the mother, the groom. She calms them down because they're like, oh, something's happening. And then I walk down, and then all the little whatever, I don't know. But I'm sitting there, and as we have rehearsed, the officiant and the groom are going to walk through a door. And then the next song is when the bridesmaids come in. And the next song is when I stand up, because that's the bridal procession. So I'm sitting there. Now, I'm not sure what happened. I think that I was probably more nervous than I realized and I think maybe the officiant came in too soon. But all I know is that yours truly stood up at the wrong time. Stood up when my son Harry was walking down the aisle to come be seated himself because he was an usher. And then I go, what do? We can't all stand. We got too many people to come in and we'll not see the bridesmaids. And I really love their dresses and I want them to be seen. So anyway, I kind of look at the officiant like, who's going to sit this room down, you or me? And she kind of said something. And then I just got up and said, okay, y'all just sit down. I just said, sit down. And so they all sit down, and then the bridesmaids come in and the grooms and all that. And then it's time. Then it's the time. And so then I just stood up and just did a big flourish like, okay, everybody, this is when you can stand up. And it just was so imperfect. And I couldn't believe I had messed up. I had one job that day. It was to stand up at the right time. And I'm usually pretty dependable. No, I totally messed it up. And it was awesome. People like my husband and a friend, they were like, actually, that made everybody just feel so comfortable. It's not perfect, but we're together. And then like my nephew, who's now just engaged, his fiance to be visited. And she was like, it wasn't about like the mess up or the party itself. It was like, your family just likes to be together. This must be what heaven's going to be like. You just kind of like being together. And so that to me was a successful wedding. Yeah, maybe I wish I could have spent more on this or that, but the vibe was we were just so happy to be together. That's why they were talking. My mother says that she was on the front row and people were just coming up and talking to her before we came in. Like, I'm like, what? So it's just made me so happy. But I didn't plan it, but I did pray. And that is how God answered my prayers for that wedding.
I love it because you started your story. I can't help it because this is where we're going to go. You said we had everything under control.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, so that's usually when Christ wants to teach us something more, in other words, what is this, what is the wedding actually about? What is it pointing to? The different people who are invited, isn't that fascinating how everybody was engaging in it in different ways, but there was this relational tone where people felt like they could be really casual.
Yeah.
And whether you stood up at the right time or not, Eloise's still married. I mean, she's married now. So it all worked out. I know for both my children, their weddings were very different. Anna Grace got married first, and I have told this story before, so pardon me if you've heard it before, but as a pastor's kid, I was like, this is your shot, kid. If you want to get married outside, like in California, where you're in college, we could plan a different kind of wedding. Or if you wanted to be like total covenant chaos, then you could come home and then we're going to need to invite everybody. So it was very much like an Amish barn raising because we did invite the congregation. She wanted to invite children. She wanted to invite people that had been in our other congregations who had shaped her.
Yeah.
To sit with our family. And very, very rarely do we have the scope of the whole moments in our life where we see the picture. We get the big picture.
Yes.
Like your nephew's future wife.
Yeah.
She got the big picture, but she got the big picture of what was going on. And for me, when my friend said, don't do the ugly cry because because that will be in pictures forever, which I did do. I came around the corner with Haddon and I saw the scope of the whole. I saw the covenant family. I saw all the people who God had used to prepare the bride for her bridegroom, Anna Grace for Kevin. And it was, I sobbed ugly and it was okay. And we have the picture, but, and so that's one of the things that I took away from Anna Grace's wedding. And then when Haddon got married, it was in 2020, and he had met his beloved Susie and wanted to get married and did not want to wait. And he resides in the District of Columbia, and so the rules were really stringent there. So we tried to get married. I think they had 4 different wedding plans. That
is a nightmare.
COVID, and so they tried to get married in the district and then Northern Virginia, and then finally Chris said, "If you want to be married, son, we'll find a place. And you can be married." And so he had to decide who the most important people that we were restricted, I think, to 40 people.
Oh yeah,
went to West Virginia. He got married in a field by his dad and one of his pastors, and both Anna Grace and Haddon are both married. Did the plans go exactly the way we thought? No. But there's something about, inviting people to participate in something that's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
And so your friends who got to gather, both there in Texas and in Mississippi, and for me in Naperville and a field in West Virginia, we said, come and see something that's beautiful. Share it with us.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we see in the story, where Jesus is saying, a wedding is pointing to something that's more beautiful than what's going on in this room. And I want you to participate in it. So let's go to John 2 today and read what happens with Jesus' first miracle.
Okay. On the 3rd day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them up to the brim.
Okay. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast." So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water now had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called to the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." This is the first of the signs Jesus did at Cana in Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. And after this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and his brothers and the disciples, and they stayed there for a few days. So this is the wedding plan that went sideways, went a little unexpected, right? And, I love Jesus in engaging with his mother, who's like, fix the problem,
pressure, mama pressure.
Yes. and Jesus is saying, okay, my hour is not yet come. So he's managing his mom's expectations. She's basically like, we're going to be embarrassed. Like, you got to do something. I know you can. Why aren't you doing what I want you to do? And how often am I just like Mary?
Yes.
Like, Jesus, why aren't you solving the problem the way I want you to solve the problem?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember when I was younger, and probably still now, if I remember distinctly losing my keys and I had to go somewhere, and I was like, I knew the catechism. I knew you're sovereign. I know you're omniscient. Where are my keys, and why are you letting me suffer this way? You know I'm trying to do something and go somewhere, and you see the keys. Why aren't you telling me where they are? I was just like a little reformed brat is what I was.
You knew all the right answers, but you weren't sure how it was going to work out.
Exactly. I just wanted to work out for me.
All in our head, not in our heart. Brother. Yeah. So Jesus is, we have these jars here. They're full to the brim of water, with water, and he repurposes the jars to put on display his glory, which is what he does all the time. He repurposes things in our life. And as we, in this particular story, we're making space for his glory to radiate and shine, right? It's like, it's not about the bride and groom. It's not about the good wine, the bad wine, whether it's running out, all of the things that we might have on our proverbial wedding plan. But we see Jesus showing us that, just in essence, wine is really, the good wine is about joy and about blessing. Yeah. And it's about having the best of the best from Christ. Yeah. And that's what he gives us, right?
Oh, yeah. And then look at this. Remember maybe a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about how Jesus fed the 5,000 with a sack lunch and how there were 12 baskets of leftovers? This is the same thing. Like, they probably didn't get through all this wine because it was at the end. But it was just, that's the way Jesus does things, abundantly. Yeah, abundantly.
Super abundance. And and he is, again, back to what we talked about a couple weeks ago, he's the host. And so it's, he's the master, he says, often they keep they put the good wine out first, but then they serve the poor wine at the end. But you've kept the good wine until now. In other words, it's all good. It's all the best. It's all about blessing. Yeah. And yet, this kind of radical hospitality that says, I will give you the best.
Yeah.
Really at its heart is about stewardship. It's realizing that the good wine, the good steak, the good, the best coffee, I don't know, whatever you feel like you might feel a little ownership of, like, I'm not sure I want to share that. Like at our house, sometimes, and again, I'm on record as saying all these things out in public, so I never feel too bad about saying them on a podcast. Our kids growing up, because we often feed people smoked meats. they would come in and they'd say, is this a pulled pork meal, a ribs meal, or a brisket meal? Like they knew we had levels, because the meat cost, increasingly more. So they were like, is this a brisket kind of group or is this a pulled pork kind of group? And we were like,
that's awesome.
Well, this kind of like this kind of a pulled pork kind of party. So that's probably what we're going to pull out. Yeah. But where I'm going with this is radical hospitality costs you. And what it's asking of us is saying, whose meat is that anyway?
That's
whose wine is it anyway? It belongs to Christ. So I can share it.
Oh man.
I can make space in my home. I can make space in my grocery bill.
Yes.
I can make space in my, it never fails. You take somebody to go get coffee and you're like, you're just going to get the plain, Americano or whatever. And then they get the iced latte, super extra with shot of whatever, and you're just like, okay, that's not what I was expecting. Like, in other words, sometimes we think, oh, well, people will access it at the same level, but the hospitality is extravagant, isn't it?
Yes. And I feel like when I'm really tested in my sharing attitude is when they use a ton of my Nespresso pods. Because that I'm like, one a day is usually, now I will say on my day off, it is a 2 Nespresso day. I'm going to do it. But those little things cost money. And I remember one time we had community group over and like a dummy, I don't have a coffee pot for a crowd. So what else are they going to do? Boy, all I could see was all those Nespresso pods just leaving my little cash, my little, I was running out fast, but that taught me a lesson. I need to have a better coffee pot system for a group.
Okay, so you learned a practical application, of that, but you also did this with your hands. And listen, this is what's going on in my heart too, people. I want to hoard. I want to hoard it up, and I don't want to put out the best of the best of the best, because what if somebody doesn't appreciate it the way we would? Or what if they use more, like you said, than you think is reasonably, what somebody should do when they're in someone else's house. And yet, when we think in terms of stewardship, something of priceless value entrusted by the King for kingdom purposes, then I can live life with my hands open. I can share. And a lot of hospitality is about sharing. And we share out of the superabundance. And when we do, like the little boy with the lunch, or just as Jesus shows us in this story, it doesn't run out.
It doesn't run out, and it's good. It's like the vintage stuff. It's like something you couldn't have afforded to buy. As a matter of fact, I bet it didn't even exist. It's Jesus' own vintage. It's extraordinary. It's the best drink they ever had. Then they were miserable the rest of their lives, missing out on that wine. We can get some more of that year.
But yeah, I love that thought, because really, we get so, I don't know, complacent or just accustomed to certain tastes. And then when you truly taste and see that the Lord is good, you truly see how good he is and how generous he is. Then it's like nothing ever tastes the same ever again. That's really when we know the gospel has taken hold in our heart. And so let's talk for a second about what it looks like, not only just to be a steward instead of an owner, but like what we do when my plan goes out the window and his plan is, it's always superior. It's not either or. It's always better, but we wrestle through that.
Yeah. Well, I think that is what's so interesting. I had prayed for my daughter's wedding. I knew enough. I have learned the hard way that I could not control the weather. I could not control people's where they were. I could, it reminded me of working at camp where they would plan an event and they would have all the pieces for a fun event, but the magic had to come for it just to work. And I felt like that about the wedding. I knew what I wanted. I knew, and Eloise and I had talked about what is the vibe, what is it we want it to look like. And I would, in my event planning mode, go, okay, for that to happen, these are the ingredients we have to have there. Let's spend money on these, but not that. It was that kind of thing. Okay. I never thought God would answer my prayers for it to be fun by me making such a colossal mistake. That was not my strategy. That was not my strategy. And it wouldn't have been as fun if I had been perfect. That is the lesson is, oh my word, and you know what? It wasn't about me. That's why I could go with it, because God, it wasn't about me. It was about Eloise and the people there. And we're just here, and this isn't Instagrammable, people. This is real life wedding. No one's putting this in a magazine, and we're okay with that. And so it just kind of brought us down to reality where everybody's not perfect, and we kind of are okay with that. And so everybody kind of relaxed. So I never thought God would answer my prayers through my mishaps. And I think hospitality is a lot like that. We picture what we think will be a successful hospitality thing. These people in Cana, they had bought what they thought would make a good party, and they were wrong. And they ran out, which is like social faux pas number one. And Jesus had other plans. It made it a better wedding. They had better wine than their plan. So I think we have to remind ourselves of God's plans always trump ours, even if we don't see why.
That's right. And he's always doing more than we can see. And I have seen, as a pastor's wife, I've been to a lot of weddings, and I have seen a lot of things go sideways. And so I often think about this one particular story, and hopefully this will land us in a place where we can laugh. But I mean, I've seen, back in the day, people would do the 2 unity candles, and the 2 become 1, and then they light the candle, and then the candles blow out, or in right when Chris is saying that, or not a good sign. People dropping because they lock their knees. I mean, that's unfortunate. Mixing of the sand, and then the sand goes on the ground, and I've seen every little whatever the wedding.
The trope of the day.
Trope of the day is, I've seen it go badly, and but never more so than when you do it outside. And it is, you're just asking for a sanctification lesson in that you're not in control. And one time when Chris was doing a wedding outside, nobody checked, but it was some kind of like a motorcycle rally. So we're outside. We're outside, and then behind him, like where this road is up here, it's real quiet. It seems like a sacred moment, and it is sacred because, of course, it's a covenant between God and the bride and the groom.
Yeah.
But then, it's just like Harley Davidson on display. Like, it's just all these motorcycles. And so Chris is talking, and you can't hear him anymore.
Oh, because they're loud.
He stops. He's like, okay, well, I'll just wait for a second, because surely it's just a couple of motorcycles going by. And then he starts again, and then more come. It must have been thousands and thousands of motorcycles. So at this point, he's trying to make people, again, we're all, at this point, we're laughing.
Oh, yeah.
Because, the timetable of the wedding, which, usually a good wedding is usually around 27 minutes, because you've got to get people in and out and then get the pictures, whatever. Sometimes they go a lot longer than that. But anyway, this one lasted a lot longer than it was going to last. But where I'm going with this is, sometimes when your plans go sideways, and they almost always do, can you just laugh? Can you say, this is just a great, exhibit A, that it's not about my glory, but it's all about his glory. And that's where the story goes, is he's saying it was to put his glory on display, and for people to understand he is the Christ. It was part of him, communicating, at least to this particular group of people, the Messiah has come, and life is going to be different, and his glory is unlike anything you have ever witnessed before. And so, what does it look like for us to make space for his plan? Yeah. And to make space for the best, to share.
Yeah. And I wonder if that's where Mary was coming from, if she was worried about the host's glory.
Maybe so. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's where, and she was being kind, and she was probably empathetic, like, oh my gosh, if this had happened in your brother's wedding, I would have died. And so but really that's about a human glory.
Right.
And Jesus is was always like, it's my Father's will, not mine. It's my Father's glory, not mine. Like, it's about that the whole time. And we see this as the opening act of, this is what I can do, but not for the reasons you want, not for your glory and your comfort and worldly things like a party, but the gospel party. That's what he was focused on.
Right. And the gospel party is about the host being generous.
Yes.
And when you have encountered a generous host, who goes above and beyond, who fills your water before you even know you need it filled.
Yes.
When you go and you are staying in their house, there's a little happy waiting on a pillow.
That.
I mean, all these little things that are the extra super abundant things, again, that are just pointing to something that's a greater reality.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When the gospel changes you and you have been a recipient as an alien, a stranger, an enemy of the cross, and you receive the generosity of the sacrificial death of Jesus Christ, you want to be generous.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, think about, so Lee and I went kind of a last minute, got a great deal on a house in Mexico in May. And we get down there and I'm exhausted. And all I want to do is lie by this pool and read books and just like nobody talk to me. And he starts going, oh, we need to do this house next year with the so-and-sos and the so-and-so. And I'm thinking, can you just enjoy this? Like, why are you already thinking up the next thing? But then I realized what was happening. He wants to share the joy. He wants to someone else to experience what we were like so loving. And it reminds me of the Trinity, that the Trinity has that just communal love that the Father goes, I want y'all to feel what we feel. And so he sends Jesus and the Spirit. I mean, that is I just found the best vintage wine. Y'all have got to go get it. Y'all have got to taste this. And it's just because you have that wanting them to experience what you've experienced. That's the gasoline that is pushing this hospitality out. It's kind of like that quote of one beggar telling another beggar where the bread is or something. What is that? You say it better.
Yeah. Evangelism is one beggar telling another beggar where to find bread.
Yeah.
Or, the quote, I think about what you just shared about Lee, a joy shared is a joy doubled. In other words, as you share, it amplifies the joy.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so my prayer is that, that we could spend a few minutes this week examining what's at the heart of me hoarding.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that question.
I don't know.
Hate it at the same time.
But why am I grasping for control or grasping for ownership or, why do I not want to share? Like why the scarcity mindset?
Yeah.
If God is so generous, why the scarcity mindset? And then, maybe to spend some time meditating on what it would look like to set the table, so to speak, so that people can have a foretaste of the feast, like your nephew's future wife said.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, what is this pointing to? Like, could they experience a space with you where they felt like they were recipients of grace, recipients of generosity, and it could be that they were having a meal. It could be that they were having, an espresso, like the second Nespresso, whatever it is, like Susan gave me 2 instead of 1 or whatever. I don't know. But whatever that generosity looks like, okay, is where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
They could say, this is pointing to a wedding feast where the best wine will be there. Yeah. And the host will be at the table. And every tongue, tribe, and nation will be gathered around a table. And we will feast in the house of Zion forever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. One little Nespresso pot at a time.
So whatever you're clutching this week, how can you open it up to be a conduit of the super abundant generosity of the host of the welcome of the gospel? What would it look like for us just to be okay with that and not be scared about what might happen?
Yeah, I think I was just talking to my daughter who just got a job, like her first real full-time job with benefits. We're so excited. And she's been asking ChatGPT about her budget. And she and I were talking, and I don't think she'd mind me saying this, that we're very similar and that we're kind of hoarders of our money. Like we feel more comfortable with a cushion. So much so that I've noticed she doesn't like to part with any cushion. Now, she'll part with my cushion all day long. She's like, I want that dress. I'll say, well, why don't you buy it? You got plenty of savings. No, but you want to buy it for me? Like when she got this job, she was like, what around here can I have? And I'm like, oh my goodness, but I get it also. But anyway, I remember with money, we're talking about something else. Money can be involved with hospitality, AKA the expensive Nespresso pods. Yeah. But the same principle. I remember realizing that I was not generous and that I was taught to tithe, but it felt like a duty. It felt like I was just like I was in the last episode. I just was going to jazzercise because I'd signed up because I was just being disciplined. And I remember being in a sermon. I may have said this a long time ago on a podcast, but this great preacher was preaching, and he was like so simple. He said, if you struggle to be generous, just ask God for a generous heart. And I went, what? I can do. And I did. And it was probably a very formative time for me asking for something that I knew I couldn't do myself. And he did it. And it's not that I'm good at it. Like, it's not that I'm a natural, but I was talking to my daughter because looking at tithing on her tight budget is hard. And we're really encouraging her to put that in her budget because it's going to be harder. Like, it's just, you got to start. And it feels painful. And I just told her that story of, actually what I did, like I asked for that. And then I made a plan, and it was for any money I get, like in my mind, say 10% was a tithe. I wanted to give 15 and push it. I wanted to push myself, much like a jazzercise when I got the extra heavy weights. But anyway, she looked at me like, you lost your mind, Mama. Like, I don't see how you did that. And I don't either. Honestly, it is so not me because I'm a hoarder. But this is what happened. The 10% maybe I gave to church, but the 5% was my fun fund to give away. So say there's a woman in my church that, couldn't afford to do something. I was like, I could slip her that money, and I had so much fun. Or there's a ministry where it was not really my church, but I was really dying to be a part of it. And I would just give that extra 5% to them. It was like my fun, discretionary, fun giving money. I had so much more joy than what I felt with the cushion. I had so much more joy and freedom because guess what? I was sitting in Jesus's arms, giving his money away that I before was just hoarding. And so I just would encourage anyone. Yes, it's with money, but also it's with your time and energy, and you're risking yourself. What if they don't like me? What if this is awkward conversation? Or, we got so many tips for how to handle that stuff because we've learned, because it is kind of hard. But ask God for a generous heart. Ask him for the wine. Ask him to pass over your bottle, Jesus, so I can share it. And then it's just so much more fun. And it doesn't matter if it's a flop because it's Jesus's flop, not your flop. It's just, I cannot tell you how much joy it will bring you to trust him to provide the generous stuff, the generous heart.
Yeah. Our Father is rich.
Yeah.
And he's the King.
Yeah.
And he has storehouses of generosity and joy and freedom that he wants to pass along through you to other people as we listen to him. And that's what I heard in that story that you just told. What would it look like to live open-handed, open-hearted this week, ready to share the gospel in our lives, as 1 Thessalonians 2:8 says. And when we're ready, it's because we know we're a recipient.
Oh,
because of the generosity of the hospitality of the gospel. So this has been a fun conversation. We hope you'll come back next week as we continue to look at what it looks like to come alongside people perhaps that are really struggling and making space for them. Yeah. And because Jesus did that in our own struggle, we're fellow sinners, fellow strugglers. So if that describes you, you'll want to come back next week, next Tuesday, to listen to the Encourage podcast. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Encourage podcast, where we have one aim: to bring the hope of the gospel to the hearts of women. We invite you to share this episode with a friend and keep the conversation going. And would you also consider giving to CDM to make this podcast available to women all over the world? The Encourage podcast is a production of CDM, the discipleship ministry of the PCA.